Hello there, welcome to our series, Can God Help with Depression? And I've called this, for want of a better title, Making Changes. Now, the book that I talked about at the beginning by Sue Atkinson, called First Steps Out of Depression, she does say this right at the beginning: there seems to be no single cause of depression. It seems to be a mixture of many different things, from what has happened in our life in the past to what we think about ourselves and what is happening in the present. One of the reasons why it can be really helpful when you are depressed, not just to go to the doctor and get medication, but to work with a counsellor, is because there's a lot of things come into play with depression, and you can really sift through with the counsellor these different areas and look at them in turn. Now, one of the basic areas is what's going on for you physically. Now, a lot of depression can come out of some really difficult circumstances. So one of the first things I will do when I'm working with a client in depression is to think, okay, how did this come about? Is this circumstantial? Is this relational? Is this burnout in work? And if the answer is yes to all of those three, or any of those three, then you can help the overall depression by addressing some of the reasons why that feeling of depression began to happen in the first place. If you're at work and it's clear that you need to get some time off work, then I would recommend not only that you see your doctor about depression, but you describe some of the things that are happening in your work that are causing that sort of distress. If you're working, if you're in a relationship and the relationship is breaking down, then we can look at that relationship, and we can perhaps look at it with your partner and see the things that are making that awful feeling of bleakness grow. And then the other thing that we talked about in the last video was about processing emotions. I use the analogy of defrosting. And one thing that does begin to happen when your emotions begin to defrost is that you do a lot of crying. Crying is something I believe that God has given us as a wonderful processing tool. It's almost like it's the river, all the kind of, if you like, the rubbish of emotions can all be swept away and come out of your life. We can process them, and it's almost as like your tears are like a river that helps some of those negative emotions to flow out of you. Now, I'm being a little bit simplistic. There is something about tears that helps you to let go. And when we're looking at frozen emotions, the emotions have been there, but processes of expression, letting go of the pain, expressing that pain, letting go of the anger, expressing that anger, being able to look at the emotions and then decide where they came from, validate them, because often frozen emotions are emotions that we've swallowed instead of expressed, and we feel guilty that we've even dared to react in that way, particularly if we grew up in a family where anger was not allowed, or where one person cornered the whole anger market and nobody else expressed anger at all because they were so horrified about what was going on in that one parent. So a lot of people swallow their anger, and so anger isn't just about getting it out, it's understanding that that feeling of anger was valid in the first place, and that actually you would feel angry put in that situation. So validation of anger is really important. And I talk about forgiveness, and I believe that forgiveness is absolutely key, but not to suppress a very valid feeling of anger. And again, if you come out of the church, I don't know that the church is terribly brilliant at that. It often tries to bring you into forgiveness to suppress a negative and uncomfortable emotion rather than allow you to feel that emotion. In my opinion, true forgiveness is only possible when you're in touch with that emotion and you understand what that forgiveness is all about. It is a much deeper, much more profound and much more helpful process if you recognize the emotion in the first place. And so, for example, when I'm working with people that are depressed, where there often is quite a high kind of percentage of people that have swallowed anger. Now, of course, this is not true across the board, but some of the people that I've worked with that have been deeply depressed, they have sat on a lot of anger over a lot of period of time. And so it has been really helpful to express that anger. And under that anger is often the pain that they felt as well, and the anxiety. And so all of these emotions, they come back into play, they can be processed and they can be released. And it does make a great deal of difference to depression if that depression is around frozen feelings. Now, the reason why I've suggested that you read this book is there is no one thing that I'm saying here that will fit into everybody's experience of depression, because it can come out of many different ways and different experiences. The other circumstance that a counsellor will look at, and I think again this is enormously important, is the negative self-speak that we put on ourselves. And in my room, many people over the years have come in with a really bad press about themselves. And you talk to them about their friendships, and they will be loving friends and loving partners, loving parents, but when it comes to caring for themselves, they treat themselves worse than they would their worst enemy. And so recognizing that one of the most powerful things that we can do, and this is a very biblical precept that Jesus taught us: you love God, you love your neighbor, and you love yourself. And that is a really important part of loving. And God is really useful at this point because he loves the socks off you. There's something about God that he sees the true person. It's a very curious thing when you read the gospel, that if there was a rough pub, where people who the rest of society were inclined to look down on, that was where Jesus always ended up. And I've kind of pondered this over the years, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't in the other corner with his orange juice, kind of reading his Bible and not involved. He said he used to have meals with them. He used to go and relate to them. And I've come to the conclusion it's because he always saw people who they truly were. He saw the real person inside. He didn't see anything else, didn't see the outer stuff, didn't see the way they were dressed, didn't see whether they were in dubious professions or not. He just saw who they truly were. And I think it was more powerful that he saw who they truly were and empowered that person to come into being. So if you let the Lord near you, he's going to see you in a much better way probably than you see yourself. But not only that, that power doesn't just accept, but it kind of calls forth. That affirmation isn't just I see you as a really nice person. It's more than that. It's you are a lovely person. And in that voice, in that word, it's as if that person grows up to be who that person is. And so the Lord is a wonderful love to bring in when I come across people that really have this negative picture of themselves, because I know that when I introduce them to God, their greatest fan is going to arrive in the room and look at them and see exactly who they were born to be, exactly all of their potential, and love it. Because they're looking at who they're becoming rather than who they're not at that point in time. It is the most empowering thing that you can come across. And it completely transformed my life because I'd done some pretty awful things, and I'd been through some stuff that made me feel slimed and shamed. I was abused as a child. And so that gaze of love that saw me as a true person was life-changing for me. It absolutely was life-changing. It changed the way I felt about myself. There's a verse in the Bible that says, in his light, we see light. And we love him because he first loved us. And so we catch, if you like, the reflection of his profound love for us. And it changes us. And so people that are depressed often have a really negative view of themselves. It's been added to by the fact that they don't feel they're coping very well with the depression, and their relationships are going into free fall, that maybe they're off work, and so they feel not only that they're not very nice, but they've actually failed. And so that horrible feeling, which again makes the depression even worse. And so can God help with your depression? Absolutely. He can practically help you. He can help you sift the circumstances and the emotions that might be contributing to that depression. But more importantly, the negative things you feel about yourself, as he gazes at you, they get swept aside. It's very hard to explain to people that don't get Christianity how powerful the gaze of God is when it really falls upon you. When you recognize that there is a divine being gazing down on you, and that gaze is kind, it's loving, it's enabling, it's empowering, it likes you as well as love you, that he is humorous and full of fun. When you begin to understand this about God, you kind of want to hang around her, because who wouldn't? If that was a human being, if that was their characteristic, you want to be around them. And so that is true for us. And I really get that people flock to Jesus, because when you meet Jesus and when you meet his Father, and you get to know the essence of that, you want to hang around. You absolutely want to hang around. You want to get to know them, and you feel safe enough to let them get to know you. So if you're in the grip of depression, to know that there's someone who believes in you, can help you sift through your circumstances, can help you process your emotions, that is really good news if you're depressed, because God turns up to help you with the practicalities, to help you with the internals, and to begin to melt away some of those negative horizons that you felt were all you could ever see. Does it take time? Yes, it absolutely does. It takes a while for depression to build up. I know there are people who get clinical depression where they suddenly go into episodes of it, but the depressions that are not necessarily just medical and clinical, they often are a pervasive feeling that gradually builds up, or a feeling of burnout that gradually happens. And so situations like that, then it takes a while for that to shift, because there's so many different strands and complexities of it. But I do believe, and it's why I'm going to do some prayers in a minute for anxiety and depression. Those prayers are the opening of the life for God to come and help us with anxiety and to help us with depression. And if you are at the point where you feel, if that's true, if what she's saying is true, if there is someone who loves me and can help me, then I'm up for that. Then when we do these two prayers, and I will explain it again in each prayer so that you kind of understand what's going on, in case people go to the prayer bits and they're not listening to this. But basically it's a chance for you to turn up and open your life. And there is no way that God will come in deeply unless you ask him to and you want him to, because love never invades. Love waits. The essence of love is it waits to be invited. And God will do everything within his power to help you understand that if you did listen to his invite, it would be a really good thing to do, but he will wait for you to open the door. So prayer in some ways is, certainly when you start doing it, the opening of the door. So I would invite you to come to the prayer for anxiety and the prayer for depression, where I give you a chance very, very simply to begin that journey. And it will be a journey. And what will happen when you pray, that things will not just happen in your life, but the Lord will be wanting to bring people into your life. And I will be encouraging you to go find your family, because out there are brothers and sisters, if you become a Christian, that are your family. And God always intended you to love and be loved in a family. He never intended you to do life alone. So that's really important as well. So I hope you found these little kind of talks on depression. Do look at the book, because that will go much deeper into a subject that I cannot hope to widely tackle, because it is such a big one. Do come and join us in the prayers, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.